Hey everybody, Sandra here, Plant Rich Sandra. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. It seems like forever since I've made a video, and so I was pretty antsy to get back in here and to talk to you guys again. I've really missed it, and maybe I'm rushing a little bit here, but I really did want to make a video or two today. Today I'm going to demonstrate a recipe that I discovered when I was in Nice, France. I just returned last Monday late night, and so there was a particular street food that I had read about and heard about before I even went, and I saw it while I was there, and I've done some research on it since I've been home, and that is what I wanted to talk about today. I did not try it while I was there because it does involve salt and olive oil, and so I decided I was not going to break from my running streak here to try it, but I was anxious to see if I could come up with a Nutritarian version. I think I have. So first of all, the recipe, the dish is called Socca in Nice in France, S-O-C-C-A, and there is a very similar, if not identical, dish that is served in Liguria, Italy, which is just basically right next door, and they call it farinata in Italian, F-A-R-I-N-A-T-A, and it is essentially a chickpea pancake made out of chickpea flour, and like I said, it's a street food. And so it kind of looks like pizza dough with nothing on it, is what it essentially looks like. So it is a large chickpea pancake. It is from the region of Provence and neighboring Liguria. And traditionally it is cooked in wood ovens on copper discs. It's roughly cut and it is served hot or warm. I do want to say that this is not good cold. So it does need to be served right out of the oven pretty much. In the main market of Nice, it is baked a few hundred yards away and it's delivered by bicycle, and that's kind of cool. A guy that's on a bike and he goes back and forth on his bike with the product on the back, and he takes it to the place where they sell it, and there's a line of people and they buy it and it's all gone in a minute, you know, and then back he goes and more is being baked in his interim, and then he's back again and there are more people waiting to buy it. So it is quite popular in Nice, and it's just eaten in a piece of paper on the street. If you do not have any wood or copper to bake this on, that's not a problem. They are nearly as great in a skillet or in a pizza pan in your oven, and they are totally foolproof. Well, yesterday I had a little bit of an issue, but I'll get into that in a minute. So the original recipe, the true recipe, I'm taking a version from the New York Times here on their article about Socca, is very similar to what I'm going to be making for you today, the Nutritarian version. But the original recipe is 1 cup of chickpea flour with a teaspoon of salt and some freshly ground black pepper, and then it calls for 4 to 6 tablespoons of olive oil. And then this one sounds great. It's a half of a large onion thinly sliced and 2 teaspoons of chopped fresh rosemary. So those are the ingredients in this one. And my Nutritarian version is going to be 1 cup of chickpea flour. Okay, so what I have here is some that I ordered on Amazon, some organic chickpea flour. Also, Bob's Red Mill sells organic chickpea flour as well. But yesterday, I stopped off at Bulk Nation in Claremont after I went shopping. Hope you like my new blouse. And I bought a bunch of it because tomorrow night at the Webster Eats to Live meeting, I plan on giving everybody that comes a little goodie bag with 1 cup of chickpea flour and 2 tablespoons of the Mediterranean pine nuts and 2 tablespoons of the coconut aminos, because not everybody has those ingredients at their house normally, so that they can go home and make it, since it's not going to be good for me to make it and take it that when I get there. Okay, so my version does call for 1 cup of the chickpea flour, and then I use, instead of using olive oil, I'm using 2 tablespoons of the pine nuts, and then 2 tablespoons of coconut aminos, but you could use the other liquid aminos too. and I'm going to flavor mine with herbe de Provence. But you could use any flavoring that you want. I don't have any fresh rosemary, any fresh thyme, any fresh basil here today, so I'm just going to use herbe de Provence since it is from that region. And I'm using the Mediterranean pine nuts as my replacement for the olive oil because A, they're very soft, and B, they are from the Mediterranean, so I figured I would use that. However, I do want to say that if you don't use pine nuts, why not use hemp hearts? Or why not use sesame seeds, raw unsalted sesame seeds? They're very soft. Okay, so in addition to that, the original recipe called for 1 cup of lukewarm water, hot water. And since I'm using 2 tablespoons of coconut aminos and 2 tablespoons of the pine nuts rather than the 2 tablespoons of olive oil, I am going to use just 3/4 of a cup of lukewarm water in the recipe. Okay, so my plan is this. I'm going to get my Vitamix down, and I'm going to put the 3/4 of a cup of lukewarm water in it, 2 tablespoons of liquid aminos, and the 2 tablespoons of the pine nuts. And I'm going to blend it really well. And then I'm not going to add my herbe de Provence into that because I want there to be the little chunks in the final product, so I don't want it totally blended in. I guess I could put like a little bit in there and then also add more to get the color and the pretty appearance in there. I could do that to give it more flavor. The one I made yesterday, my very first attempt, was very good with the herbe de Provence, so I could do that. And so I'm going to mix. What you do is you mix that up, and if you have a Vitamix, then you're good with that. But if you're using a mid-level food processor, then I recommend that you mix those ingredients together and then let it sit for an hour or two. So mix it in advance, let it sit for an hour or two, and then pre-blend it. Then blend it again, and that will have given the pine nuts or the hemp hearts or whatever a chance to soften up even more, and then you blend it some more. So that's going to simulate the olive oil, and it will be smooth if you give your blender a chance to, give your nuts a chance to kind of soften up some. But if you have a Vitamix, you don't really need to do that. So that was my fix for not using olive oil, and I'm using a healthy fat that has its fiber right along with it in the form of the Mediterranean pine nuts. Okay, so the next thing is, what do you bake this in? How does that work? Well, first of all, you take your cup of chickpea flour, and you get a medium-sized bowl, and then you put the 1 cup of chickpea flour, and then you put that liquid mixture in there and mix it up. And that is where I'm also then going to add the herbe de Provence, more of that in there, and give it a good whisk, give it a good stir, get rid of all of the lumps of the chickpea flour, and then the most important thing is you've got to let it sit. A minimum of 15 minutes, or you can let it sit for at least 30 minutes, or one recipe, this New York Times article said up to 12 hours, but a vegan recipe that I actually used yesterday said up to 24 hours. I would recommend putting it in the refrigerator if you're going to let it sit for 24 hours, but that's just me because I've had food poisoning and I don't ever want it again, so I'm a little bit careful about stuff like that myself. Okay, so at least 15 minutes because the chickpea flour is going to harden up a little bit. It's going to swell up and take a little bit more of a form to it, and so it does need to sit for 15 minutes. Okay. Now the baking part, your oven is going to be 450, and you need to get your oven preheated, and then the question is, what are you going to bake this in yourself? So yesterday I used a rather large casserole pan, and I did use olive oil. I put a thin layer of olive oil in there. Most of the olive oil ended up on, I put like a teaspoon. Most of it ended up on the paper towel that I used to spread it around. So there wasn't really that much in the casserole dish. And yet, when I was done, what was right around the edges was stuck so hard that I lost some of it in the casserole, in the baking pan. So I am not going to do that again. Today I'm going to use parchment paper, okay, that I'm going to put down, and I'm going to put a thin layer of olive oil on that too, but I am going to use parchment paper. Okay, so a lot of the recipes call for a cast iron skillet, and I have not used my cast iron skillet in years and years and years. I think I have two. I have another one somewhere. I have no idea where. But as I was digging around, I found this old, extremely rusty one, and I am not taking the time to clean this one today, so that's out. I'm not doing it. Okay, maybe some other time, but not today. And then I thought, oh, well, I've never used this in the oven, but I don't really know much about these things. I know some of y'all are experts with these things, but I'm not. Plus, I really do want to use the parchment paper, so I'm not going to take the time today to cut and use that, not today. But I think that would work really well. I just don't want to do it today. So then I thought this is an 8x8. And this I think would be great, but I believe that I'm going to be making too much to go in an 8x8. And if I had a 9x9, which I'm going to go get, then that would be it. No question about it. Parchment paper in a 9x9. But that's an 8x8. Okay, so I rejected that for today. And now I've settled on this one, which is smaller than the one I used yesterday, and I am going to line it with the parchment paper, and I am going to put a thin layer of my son's olive oil on there, on the parchment paper as well. So this is the one I'm going to use. Okay, all right, so that's what I'm going to do, and so now let's go ahead and get started on this. Okay, so this is awesome. I didn't even think about this, but this gives me a chance to show off my 4 adorable little mini bowls that I found at the open air market in Nice. And, you know, when you are a nutritarian, you don't get to enjoy everything food-wise, but you can participate in some of the containers, the pretty local containers and things. And so while I was there, I found these cute bowls, and I got 4 of them. Okay, and they're just souvenir bowls, but anyway, they say Nice in them. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to put 3/4 of a cup of lukewarm or hot water into the Vitamix, and then we're going to put 2 tablespoons of coconut aminos in there, and we're going to go ahead and put some of the herbe de Provence in there now. And then we'll add more and whole later. Okay, so we got that in there. And then I have 2 tablespoons of Mediterranean pine nuts in there. And that the chickpea flour waits until later. Okay, so if you can possibly get Mediterranean pine nuts rather than Chinese pine nuts, Dr. Furman says that it is a better option because they have more nutrients in them packed in than the Chinese. Also, there are other issues as well, so that's just a recommendation. Okay, so now we're going to put this on. Okay, get on there. I'm trying to do this one-handed here. Okay, so we're going to give this a little... Okay, on to the next step. Okay, let's see if I can do this here one-handed. All right, so the next step after you get your delicious liquid here ready to go, you are going to mix all of this together and whisk it together. And I just want to point out that since I did add some of the herbe de Provence in before blending in the Vitamix, that I am now, I just added some more whole into this and kind of let it sit for a little while to absorb, and so that will give some interest visually into the chickpea pancake. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to put 1 cup of chickpea flour into a medium mixing bowl. And by the way, this gives me a chance to show off my bowl from this summer's trip to Italy. This is from Capri, with the lemons that they are famous for in Capri, Italy. Okay, and then I'm going to put in my mixture here, which is basically the equivalent of 1 cup of liquid. And because I put the 2 tablespoons of the liquid aminos in there and the 2 tablespoons of the Mediterranean pine nuts in there. Okay, so then you whisk it up, and then you're going to let it sit for a minimum of 15 minutes, up to a maximum of like 12 hours or 24, depending on which professional chefs you listen to. Don't listen to me when it comes to that, because I am definitely not a professional chef. Okay, I'm going to mix this up, and then I'm going to let it sit, and I'm going to head to church because I'm going to be late if I don't get my butt in gear. And Sunday school is my favorite part of church, because I attend the elderly class, and they are the most precious people to me. So I don't want to miss out on getting there and hugging everybody's neck in my Sunday school class. 2 of the people there I've known since I was 4 years old. Miss Maud is our Sunday school teacher. She just turned 90. And Mr. Pete also just turned 90. They are just a couple weeks apart, and I've known them for many, 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 many years, and I'm almost 58, and I've known them since I was 4 years old. So anyway, I'm going to stir this and then let it sit, and then after church, I'll come back and finish this recipe. Okay, everybody, talk to you later. Bye. All right, so here we are. It has been a little over 2 hours because I went to Sunday school and church and then stayed after and visited for a little while. And our little batter has been sitting here, so I covered it because I have 1 cat here in the house and I didn't want him getting curious about this. So, okay, let's see how this looks. All right, here is our batter, our chickpea batter, and it has the ground up herbe de Provence in it, as well as I put some of the whole in there after it went through the Vitamix. I added more to it, so it should be pretty flavorful. And I have some parchment paper here in my casserole dish, and I put a very thin layer of olive oil in there to try to keep it from sticking to the parchment paper after what happened to me yesterday and my first attempt. And I also wanted to mention that I didn't mention this earlier, but you know, coconut aminos, or the other liquid aminos like Bragg's liquid aminos, is a salt substitute. It's what we use frequently for that. So that's the reason that I added 2 tablespoons of the liquid aminos to that. Okay, so I'm going to give this one more stir here, and then I'm going to spread it in there. Okay, so that's my next step. Here I go. Okay, so the batter turned out to be a lot drier and stiffer than I anticipated it would be, and so in order to spread it, I had to kind of do it the way we do with you know, baking and that kind of thing with our dough. And I had to wet my hand. I had to roll my sleeve up, my right sleeve up, and keep my hand wet in order to spread it with my hand rather than with the spatula or with the fork. And so that's why it kind of looks wet on the top, is because I had to pat it down with a wet hand to keep it from sticking to my hand and to get it in there. The other thing I want to mention is that this side over here is deliberately a little bit thicker than this side, and I thought that I would do some experimentation and see if I actually like it baked slightly thicker, or if I, you know, prefer it pretty thin. So we'll see how that goes. The whole time I've had the oven preheating to 450, and this is supposed to bake for 12 to 15 minutes. And if you like a crusty top, a crispier top, then the instructions say that you can switch it over to broil for a few extra minutes at the end. And I don't know yet if I'm going to do that with this batch or not. I did do that yesterday, but I may not do that with this batch today. We'll just have to see how that goes. Okay, so now I'm going to put it in the oven. I'm going to set my phone for 12 minutes and then come back and take a look at it and see how it's going. And in the meantime, I'm going to have a pink grapefruit. Okay, all right, bye. Okay, folks, here it is straight out of the oven at about maybe 13 and a half minutes, baking at 450, and it smells so freaking good. I just don't know how much I can take before I finally get this cut up. And I am heating up a bowl of my vegetable soup in my microwave because I'm going to try dipping it as one possible application for this. But knowing me, I could sit here literally and just eat every single bit of it in 3 minutes. I'm pretty hungry right now. The grapefruit was good, but I'm ready for something substantial. Okay, so now I'm going to take my pizza cutter here and cut this up. Here I go. Okay, I was just curious if I could do this without having to hang my phone from above. See if this will cut. Okay, here we go. Oh, this is so much better. Oh my goodness, there will be nothing wasted this time. Look at that. Why didn't I do this yesterday instead of wasting all that in my in that one thing that I used? Holy crap. Look at that. Oh my goodness. So good. I can't wait to try that in my soup. Okay, so there you have it. Really easy. Next time, I'm definitely going to dry saute or very lightly water saute onions and some fresh garlic cloves, cut up really tiny, and put them into this before I bake it. Okay? All right, here we go. So I'm pretty happy with this recipe, with this Nutritarian version of Socca / farinata. And I hope you guys will give it a try. And I also hope that you will give me some feedback as to what you think of it. I did not try the real thing, so I'm not able to compare it to the real thing, but considering that I no longer add actual salt or really use olive oil in anything, then it's kind of a moot point. I would not be trying it regardless, but I believe that this recipe is really good in its own right, but I would love to get your feedback on that. So if you found any use in this little episode, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a thumbs up. And also, if you have not yet subscribed, I hope that you'll subscribe to this channel, Plant Rich Sandra. And I also hope that you will hit the notification bell so that you will get notified every time I come out with a new episode. And that if you know of anybody who might benefit from this channel at all, that you would share this episode or any of my episodes with anybody that you feel like may get some help from this. I'm very happy to help, and it just makes me very, it just gives me a great feeling of satisfaction to know that I might be helping somebody to get healthy. That's really important to me. Also, just as a reminder that we do meet on Monday nights, almost every Monday night at 6:30 in Webster, Florida, and I call it Webster Eats to Live Nutritarian, and this is a free support group. 6:30 in the historic community building in Webster, Florida. We are meeting tomorrow night, and we will be meeting until the week of Thanksgiving. We won't meet that Monday night, but we'll be meeting every Monday night until then, and then we won't meet during Christmas vacation on the Mondays during Christmas vacation. Okay, so feel free to send me an email at sanka61@yahoo.com. That is Sanka, like the old decaffeinated coffee, SANKA 61, that's the year of my birth, at yahoo.com, and I'll be happy to send you a Word document of this recipe, as well as the documents that I have come up with so far, in relation to Webster Eats to Live support group. And I think I have 7 so far, so this one is going to be 8, and I'll be happy to send it to you. And I'm working on some other episodes this afternoon as well. One on salt-free or extremely low sodium spices, and some beans, an episode on beans, and a document on beans, which has taken me many, many hours to compile, and it's not done yet, but I'm working on it. And so look forward to seeing y'all again, and I hope that you will communicate back with me either in the comments or send me an email, okay? And be sure you label the email, Nutritarian or Webster Eats to Live or Eat to Live or something to that effect, okay? Everybody have a great day, and we will talk to y'all again soon. Okay, bye.